Over the past 2 weeks, I've given myself 6 rolls of virtual film. No previews, no checking of focus or composition, just me, my camera, and the world around me. In a time where it's easy to shoot hundreds of photos without thinking, I wanted to slow down, make each shot count, and reconnect a bit with why I started taking photos in the first place. And I was genuinely surprised with how that went. I'm not just saying that to get you to keep watching, genuinely, I was surprised. So firstly, why? And why is film photography growing so much in popularity? This could probably have its own video, and maybe at some point I will make that, but I think people are just looking to simplify things. They're looking to remove distractions. Shooting film is a much simpler way of doing things. And I think generally people, certainly of my age, are looking for some sort of nostalgic familiarity. This has been a chaotic year, and maybe harking back to the days of film photography just makes people feel something that they've been missing for the last few years. And I think that feeling something is something that you get more from shooting film. Another reason is I think it's just anti-perfectionism. We're so used to seeing perfect images, not just real ones anymore either, AI created ones. And I think film is imperfect, and people are connecting to that in a way that maybe they didn't before. And I think all of this together is just leading to putting a bit more joy back into photography for some people. But can you really recreate that experience with a digital camera? My thoughts were probably not. And as I go through this video, I will uncover the answer to that. One of the things that film does have going for it is that it is wildly expensive. Stick in the comments below how much you think it's going to cost me if I was to buy these 6 films and process them. This will basically be how much money I save by not shooting film. On that note, I did have to buy the digital cameras, and they are wildly expensive too. The Fuji X100VI was recently released, and this is basically a camera that mimics shooting film. This camera is £700, and I actually started making this video originally before that camera came out. What I want to do with it is see if I can shoot with this camera for a few days and treat it like a film camera. So I do feel like my chips have been pissed on slightly by Fujifilm and that release. However, I still wanted to make this video and see what I could learn from it. This camera that I've used for this, the X100VI, costs even more, but it's a camera I've owned for a few months, and the reason I've opted for this to do this challenge is because of the customizable recipes that you can put into it. These are basically a group of settings that are completely customizable that give you different JPEGs out of the camera and wildly different looks. There's loads of them online that you can find, and I'll go through the ones I've used shortly. You could do this on any camera. Any camera will give you JPEGs. The customization element of those JPEGs varies depending on which camera system you have. Some are very much better than others. Sony, I'm looking at you in particular here. But there's a lot of recipes for this that shoot quite closely to the look of certain films. So I collected a number of recipes for this. I've used 5 different ones, and I've programmed them into this camera using the custom modes. And these are now set up using this button here. I press that and I can switch between. Most of them I got from Fuji X Weekly, but I'll put links to all of them in the description below. So it's time to set some rules, and some of these should be pretty obvious. Each roll of film I shoot would be 36 exposures, and when I got to the end of 36 exposures, I could then change to a different recipe or film stock if I wanted to, or I could stick with the same one, much like putting a new film in a film camera. There was to be no looking at the images as I took them. I just keep counting, which is more difficult than it sounds. And that was it, really. Just pretend it's a film camera. So I took myself off to North Wales and saw James, as you might have seen in last week's video, and started this journey. I also visited Manchester, and I was back in North Wales again with my wife more recently. Before I get on to showing you the images, I wanted to quickly mention the difficulties I had doing this, because these kind of set the explanation, I suppose, for the images. I know that doesn't make sense, but bear with me. Basically, I lost count a lot. I'll be honest though, I've completely lost track of how many pictures I'm up to at the moment. If you're shooting 36 exposures over a number of hours, it's quite hard when you're having a conversation with someone else and exploring somewhere you're not familiar with to remember what number you're on. And if I'm not supposed to look at the photos, it's hard to go back and check. So not every single one of my 36 exposure film was 36 exposures. Given that some were more or less than 36 exposures, it was also tricky at times to know when I'd changed the recipe. Some of them are only subtly different from one another. I think something I might do in future if I do this is make notes as I go. And a lot of film photographers do journal on their shots as they go through them, because by the time they got them processed, a lot of the information's left their memory and they want to refer back to something. So I think writing this down as you go not only will help in being able to identify what's what, but it'll also bring you even more into the present than this experience is already doing. My other issue was stopping. Although I'm trying to make this like shooting film, it's not like shooting film. It is a digital camera, so there is nothing stopping me carrying on taking photos and bending the rules slightly. Like, if something was happening or the light was changing or I don't know, things were moving into different positions, why would I potentially miss a shot just because of some rule I've imposed on myself? And then the final difficulty I've had in processing these, looking back at them, there's nothing in the files to suggest which of the simulations or recipes that I've actually used. There's nothing in the EXIF data that says which one I've used. When you set up the recipes in this camera, you are changing different parameters, and the values that are in those parameters are in the EXIF data. So you can compare what's in there to the settings for each recipe, but it's a bit of a laborious thing to do. It would be great if it carried the name of it through as well. That'll make it a lot easier, but this is just another case for maybe making notes as you go. So let's have a look at how each roll turned out. So for each roll of film, I've printed out a contact sheet I can refer to that looks a bit like this. And I've done this in a video before, and a few people asked me how I did it. So I just wanted to quickly show you that first. And basically, it's in Lightroom Classic. You select all the images that you want in the contact sheet by clicking the first one, holding Shift and clicking the last one, and then going over to the print module up here. Once you're in the print module, you select one of the contact sheets down here on the left-hand side, and then you can adjust the parameters of that contact sheet on the right-hand side with the cell spacing, how many rows you have, how many columns you have, and that basically is it. For the first fake roll of film, I selected Kodak Gold, which unsurprisingly is supposed to be like Kodak Gold 200 film stock. I'll take you through a few of the images here, but as I said, I was having a walk around Llandudno with James, and the ones that I particularly like from this are this one here of the, I wanted to say bus stop because I'm obsessed with them, but it's not. It's just a little shelter by the beach that people tend to sit in. I really like this shot and just the sort of feeling of solitude in what is quite a vibrant place. This one was a nearly shot. If the guy was sat in the center of one of these panes, I think it would have worked better. But this was another one I quite like with this guy looking out to sea. And just to prove that I did follow the rules, I'm not sure what this is a shot of. It just goes to show what can happen if you are shooting a film camera. I'm sure a lot of you back in the day when you got your film back from the developing shop, you had pictures like this in there. I like the shot of this guy next to the tokens booth, and I shot this in landscape orientation as well, but I think I prefer the portrait version of it. This next shot really intrigues me because you see these seagulls in the bottom of the frame and it all looks a bit chaotic, and then all of a sudden you see the one at the top, and this isn't a great photo by any stretch, but I just think it tells a powerful story, and I just really like it for whatever reason. And the last couple of shots on this roll were very James inspired, given he was stood right next to me. But I actually ended up shooting 38 shots with this first one because, as I alluded to, I lost count. I then swapped over to the cinematic gold recipe, which is supposed to, I think, be a bit like Kodak Vision 250D, suitable for daylight and vibrant colours. And I think there are subtle differences in the colour. I think there's just a bit more depth to the colour in not just the sky, but in the grass as well. And I took a series of shots here of these two people sat on the bench, and I think the final one is probably my favorite, with the bird directly over the top of them. I didn't get as many keepers, I'd say, from this second roll. I definitely think tiredness and harsh lighting were starting to make things a bit more difficult. This guy in this rather snazzy watermelon shirt, he caught my eye. I quite like this shot. It's not something I'd normally do, but I quite like it. There are a couple more I like of this couple in the hats, and then this seagull walking along the wall as well, that I think, again, tells a story of the place and the day. This is probably the least North Wales shot you're ever likely to see. This could quite easily have been taken in the south of France or somewhere like that, I think. I didn't get much else after that with James, and then that evening I went across to Anglesey and Newborough Beach that I've been to a few times before, and it's probably one of my favourite places to shoot, despite it being quite a popular location. It's one of those that I'm quite happy to keep going back to, because I think it's just a really nice spot. This was the last shot from that roll, or at least I thought it was. I'd only actually taken 22 photos as it turned out. But I wanted to change recipe for that evening and opted for the Portra, which is a replication of Portra 400, which is said to have excellent dynamic range and colour, and although designed for portraits, is good for landscapes as well, which is what I was essentially shooting in the evening session. I actually got a lot closer to 36 with this one and managed 34 exposures of Portra. This is where I ran into difficulties though, and ended up taking a lot of very similar shots as the light changed and stuff. I found decision making with the camera harder at this point because I didn't want to miss anything. If it was an actual roll of Portra 400 film, which retail at about £20 each, I probably would have been a bit more careful. I think my favourite shots from this roll are this one of this lady just having a paddle in the sea. Then this one of one of the lighthouses at Landwin with these kind of slightly out of focus grasses in the foreground. I shot quite a few of this, trying to work out what the best composition was. Really, I should have gone more left so that this boathouse that you can see was more prominent. I was trying to get rid of it, actually, trying to get it out of the shot, and that didn't work. And I should have looked to try and maybe include it in the composition a bit better than I did. I then went across to the more famous lighthouse that I've shot quite a few times before, but can't really get enough of, and took this one, which I quite like. I took a few shots of these boats, settling on this one as my favourite, but then the other shots from that film weren't really that much. I like the colours in this sunset shot and the one that followed, but they're more just documentations of a day, but I guess that's kind of what I was trying to do with this. As I was driving back at dusk, I knew I'd be driving by buildings that could potentially have lights on in blue hour. And since this shot I took in the Faroe Islands, I've kind of had half an idea of trying to replicate it. And ended up changing to the CineStill 800T recipe, which, funnily enough, is designed to replicate CineStill 800T. A film stock designed for low light or night photography, but can be used in the daylight with a filter that balances the shift to a kind of tungsten white balance. There's a couple of shots here that I really like. This one at the supermarket with the green lights, and just to the right of this was this outdoor laundrette that caught my eye as well. Just down the road from that, I came across this house next to the road with this single light on, and although I felt like a total weirdo taking a picture of this house, thankfully there was no one else around, and I just quite like the almost lonely feel that this conveys. Bit similar to that shot from the Faroe Islands. Because I tried to stick to the rules, I then got to the next morning in Anglesey again and stuck with the 800T, but I quickly realised that that wasn't going to work. I'd almost forgotten what I was doing and just took a few shots that were obviously completely the wrong white balance. Like I say, you can correct this with a filter or by warming it up in Lightroom. But because it was a nice morning, I decided to change the recipe to this one, which is Summer Chrome, which is, from what I can tell, a bit like either Kodachrome or Ektachrome, with this unique colour palette, which is said to be vibrant and enduring. You can see the difference in this first shot compared to the CineStill version, and it's a shot I quite like with these wildflowers and the colours of those in it. I got a few images of these boats, but this was my favourite one because it just felt a lot more calming just having the one boat in the shot. Took a few more down at the shore. I really like this, but I wish I'd done something about that lens flare, but I just didn't realize it was there at the time because I wasn't checking my images. I was trying to get images of the boats and the lobster pots with these boats out to sea in the background. And then I visited this boathouse just down the road, but it was a bit backlit, so I'm not convinced it works properly. I seem to have an obsession with lone traffic cones at the moment as well, so I couldn't resist taking this one. This might end up being another one of my random series. This farm with the caravan was quite cool, and then it wouldn't be one of my photo shoots without a bus stop or two. These aren't my favourite bus stops, but this one that was one of the last on the roll worked pretty well. I returned from Wales, and then the next morning I was in Manchester for a work event, and I thought I'll keep shooting on the same film stock again. For this one I actually learned how to spell it correctly as well. Well, almost. I find cities difficult to shoot in when they're quite busy, so being in Manchester early with this kind of lower sun made it a bit easier. It was a bit easier to find things going on that weren't really crowded with people. Like this shot of the bus, another lonely cone shot, and then I really like this shot of the guy with the cleaning trolley, but because I rushed and I didn't really realize at the time, it is not sharp. I don't know if it's camera shake or I just focused wrong. I'm not sure. I waited around a bit to see if he'd come back because I wasn't convinced I'd nailed it. And I just ran out of time. Little did I know that round the other side, that was where the shot was. And I got this, which is probably one of my favorites from these 6 rolls. I really like these 2 phone boxes as well, and I tried to get a person in these, but none of them quite worked. There's a few more shots in here that I like, some that didn't work quite so well. And then last weekend I was back in North Wales again with my wife for the night, and whilst I didn't do much photography, I did get this shot that I like from, randomly enough, a restaurant window. Walking away from the restaurant, I got this. Then closer to home, I finished the roll off with these 2 shots. And believe it or not, these last 2 were both 36 exposures. So I didn't mess every single one up. If you'd like to hear me go into more detail about these shots, I've finally set up a Patreon, and I'm going to be putting a video talking about my thought process with regard to these. Well, actually it's on there now. So if you join as a Patreon, you'll get access to that video and you'll hear my thought process for each of these shots. I'm also going to be releasing regular videos with updates as what I'm doing, more videos like this talking about images I've shot and plenty of other extras as well. So if you want to check that out, the link is in the description below. So my thoughts on this, I think overall it was a really fun experiment to do. I really enjoyed shooting in a completely different way to how I normally do. I like the look of the recipes, generally speaking, but as I discovered, sometimes they work and sometimes they don't. There's elements of parts of them that I'm not sure of, like the amount of grain, for example, being one of them. But I suppose it's a bit like using film. Different films are used in different weather conditions, different lighting conditions, and you'd pick a different film depending on what subject you were shooting. So it's exactly the same as that. And that's basically why I stopped using that cine still recipe as soon as I did, although it was a blatant cheat. For a lot of the shots, there was some minor editing that was still needed. A lot of them came out underexposed, and I suppose this is a little bit like film as well. People do edit film scans, so everything that I've shown you, it's just minor edits. It's mainly just exposure lifts. There's nothing else I've done to these files apart from that, and I've not had to do that for every single shot either. For doing stuff like daily documenting, this is an absolutely brilliant thing to do because it removes the need to edit. If you hate editing, this basically removes the need to do that. Not only does it remove the need to do that, but it also reduces the amount of shots that you have to edit because you're intentionally limiting how many times you press that shutter button. I think for the better shots though, it's a better idea not to use these recipes and actually edit them to your own preference. So much of photography is editing, so taking these best shots and applying my own presets and tweaking them is what I will continue to do. And to be able to do this, I am shooting RAW plus JPEG, so I've still got the straight out of camera JPEG with the recipe baked into it, but I've also got the RAW file and I can edit that in any way I want to, like I normally would. The best option would be something I've mentioned a number of videos ago, would be if you could bring in Lightroom presets into camera and apply them directly to the shot to give you a JPEG there and then. I think if someone can implement that in one of the cameras of the future, that would be a total game changer. I said earlier I was genuinely surprised about how this went, and I actually was. I was so much more present, I think, than I normally am on these particular shoots I was on. There were things I was paying more attention to, and there were so many times that I brought my camera up to my eye and lined up a shot and then didn't press the shutter button because I actually stood there and thought, is this a worthy thing to be taking a picture of or not? Obviously, there were some times where I took a picture and it's not actually worked out as well as I thought it would, but it did make me more mindful about what I was actually taking pictures of. And I think that really added to the experience for me. But overall, it was just a lot of fun doing this. And I think a lot more fun than it would have been. I can't really explain why or how, but just maybe it was just the novelty of doing it in a bit of a different way that made me enjoy my time with my camera over the last couple of weeks that little bit more than I have been doing. A lot of the principles for this I would like to probably make a bit more habitual, particularly the ability to be more present and pay attention to what I'm doing and not look at the shots I've taken. I realized that there were shots I took where I took a sequence of the same shot, and maybe like the fourth or fifth one that maybe was the best one, I might have missed because I was checking the previous shots. I think that's how I would have used to have done it, but by not checking and not chimping on the shots I'd already taken, I didn't miss out on that. I think that was quite a big realization from this as well. But the beauty of doing something like this is you can take as much or as little of it into your own photographic process as you want. You don't have to stick to the rules more rigidly, but I'd urge you to give something like this a go, see which bits of it work for you and if it can help you in your photographic process and if it can kind of make you more present and make photography that little bit more fun for you, because overall it should be fun. This is a really fun hobby to have. I absolutely love it. And if you can find ways of making it even more fun, then I'm all for that. I think shooting everything you see, taking thousands of shots in a day, then spending half your life sat at a desk culling those shots, that's not fun to me. This sits in the middle. It's great for documenting. It's great for a daily carry, but it doesn't carry the hassle and the expense of shooting film. I asked earlier how much you thought it would cost to buy and process the films. So the 6 films I've used during this, I know some of them were wasted because of my poor counting ability, but it would have cost me £203, which is, I don't know, $260, something like that. It is a very expensive thing, film photography. And if you extrapolate that over a year, buying a higher end digital camera suddenly seems to make a lot more sense. If being more present and having more fun in your photography is something you want, I am shortly opening up the doors to my next coaching cohort. There's a link to the waitlist below that gives you all the information you need. There's no obligation if you sign up for that waitlist, but I've already got a number of people that are really interested in doing it, and I can't wait to get started in the next few weeks. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I had a lot of fun making this and trying this out. And like I said, I'd really recommend you do it as well. As always, I appreciate you spending the time watching these videos, and I will see you next time. I've just tried to swipe my piece of paper again. I did that a couple of videos ago as well. Mad what technology does to us.